This is Energy of Business Moments with Michael Sipe, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their business success into your life and business. Energy of Business Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Michael Sipe.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Energy of Business Moments podcast. I am still your host, Michael Sipe. Today I'm excited to have Jake Dulle, CEO of LOCALVEST. They are a veteran investor network. And Jake comes to us. He's a former Exxon employee where he helped in operations, supply chain management, and procurement. And so today he takes some of that expertise and leverages that to help grow the investor networks within LOCALVEST and helping create continuity and, more importantly, provide the leadership for a really great organization. Jake's a former submarine officer and a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. And so, Jake, glad to have you on the show. Welcome aboard.
Great, and I'm excited to be here as well.
Good. Well, Jake, tell us a little bit about LOCALVEST and the nature of the industry and what you guys were trying to bring when you started that.
Great. So LOCALVEST is all about taking veteran-led companies and finding them investment capital for their opportunities. So that could be a very early stage startup. It could be a real estate syndication, alternative investments. There's also some funds out there, just anything where someone needs capital for their business. We're hoping to even push into perhaps funding some small businesses as well, which is a pretty popular topic now. But what we end up doing is we make a place online with our tools and software that they can put all of their information, like a deal room, right? And then as people interact with that deal room, you're able to see who downloaded a video, who scheduled a call, who essentially interacted with that out on that website. And then that gives you information as you're trying to take someone from a prospect to a lead to actually make an investment. You have the tools to be able to follow, like a CRM, right? You have that in the background. And then the other thing that we're able to do is promote on our network. And so we have a lot of different ways that we can put your information out there. Everything is driving towards bringing leads to you. So we are not a registered broker dealer on purpose. We are more of a marketplace, right? So what that means is when you come in, we are trying to match make. So we have a bunch of people who would like to invest in veteran-led companies. And so when you make that match, you go off and do that. We are not handling the money. We don't do a commission base. It's all about making the match. And we have a fee structure that is set up to help promote you and get you out there and be able to make investments.
Wow, great synopsis. And I love that service you guys are providing. So tell me a little bit more. What did you see in the industry that sort of caused the impetus to create a company like this?
So I am not the original founder. The founder actually is still with the company to go through, but I became the CEO in January. But the original focus when it started was to be able to have that software piece, right? So a place where you could put all of your information, share it, and then, as I said, take someone from a lead to actually closing them. But then there's this part of that came in here. I was like, well, what if you're able to do that and make groups and bring people together by location or affinity group? And we figured out very early on that the military affiliation, that affinity group is huge. And there's a big hole there, right? So people says, I want to invest in veterans, but how do I find them, right? And so that's what LOCALVEST does. And so to be able to have this place where you can go and know that when a company pops up in the feed, that is a veteran-led company in some form, I think that's amazing, right? And that's really what drove me to want to do it more than the software piece itself. It's how you can help out veterans in a way that no one else is able to do and find each other. And then I've had conversations with people, the technology we've had the last like 5 or 10 years to really be able to connect with each other in ways we've never had. I mean, I've personally used the platform before I got here, and I have invested with Army, I have invested with Navy, I have invested with Coast Guard now. I think I finally got a Coast Guard one in there, and Air Force. I'm getting all of them in there, working on the Merchant Marine, and we'll get in there. But it's just great to be able to go in and have a way to interact with the community in a completely different way.
Yeah, that's really cool. And as a CEO now, and seeing that
Mhm.
growth and seeing that development and seeing the service that you are providing actually make a difference, it's got to be reassuring. How true is that for you?
It's extreme. I mean, that's the thing that makes it, right. If you talk about the thing that gets you going every day, I really like the aspect. I'm not just out trying to make somebody's investment number higher, right? Their return that they get. It has this other purpose as well, as to help out a veteran, right? And how do we make our networks? It's someone who's maybe spent their entire career in the military and then has a business idea and goes, how do I even start, that we can help make that happen? I mean, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, that is a great motivation that I didn't have before in any of my other jobs. It's almost
Yeah,
like going back to the submarine, right? When you get a higher purpose than
almost.
just yourself, right?
Yeah. No, well, it's great to hear what people, motivates people. And I love that perspective you have. And I was thinking about it. One of the things that came to me was the idea that you've got a network, right? And so in business, we're taught like, hey, you got to build your network. And most people think of that as a lead opportunity, like, hey, I can get some leads through my network. But what I'm hearing is you guys are actually building a community. And obviously it's centered around veterans, but it's a community where, like you said, you can make that connection. And so there's almost an animus or a spirit behind it, because I've been on some of the calls too, and you can sense that it's like it's a camaraderie thing. And it doesn't matter what service you're from. I mean, there's obviously some banter sometimes, but like there's that aspect of being able to have a community you can go to and feel like, hey, I'm a part of this. This is cool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, good. So as a CEO,
Mhm.
and prior experience as well, sometimes we have our ups and downs or our highs and lows. And so how about if you could share with us and the listeners here a little bit about maybe a high you had, and what was the story behind it? Like what led up to it, and why was it so significant for you?
I, the biggest one that we had, as we get together as a team, we talked about that higher calling, about what we're doing. We have had a few companies that have come in fairly, you could call them dire straits. Like they are at the tail end. Like if I don't find funding, we're not going to be able to survive. And there have been a couple of them that have really stood out to me. There was one actually last summer that started that way. When he came in and goes, if this doesn't work, I think I'm going to fold up here, right? And they had a lot of time that they had put in this, a really great tool, and they came to us, and as a team, we were able to go through and actually find a way. We got them to a lead investor, made some more connections. They were on one of our calls, had a few investors that came in that way, and just have it be like, you did it, right? That was it. And now they're on their way, and there's so much work they've been doing. It's like they needed that little kickstart, and to know that we made that kickstart. Like I was on a phone call with someone earlier this week with a venture capitalist. Like, oh yeah, we invested in them. Like, really? I had no idea. I had no idea. That now it's just started that snowball effect, right? And sometimes all people just need is that little push. I love when we're able to do that for companies. And so it's kind of like you keep looking for that high. You keep looking at, can I help somebody solve that problem of just getting their foot in the door? And sometimes that's hard on the veteran side what to do, but there's a lot of people out there trying to do that. How do I get started?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The startup phase is so challenging, and then you run into these roadblocks of, like in this case, running out of funding. So that's a great example, and it also is kind of like I'm listening to it. And I'm thinking, wow, you've got some momentum going there, and that momentum builds, and so you're looking for, hey, who can we help solve next? And that's a
That's
great
exactly right.
great
That's
aspect of
exactly
it.
right.
Yeah. Well, cool. That's a great company to be a part of, I would think. So that's the upside, right? We have these great moments, and it is what gets us out of bed. But either with this company or another time, tell us of a story where you've had a challenging experience and it just drained you, or just was a huge blow, and then how you came out of it.
Absolutely. So before, as I said, I started as CEO in January, but I've been doing work before that, right? And there was a project that we wanted to get underway. We were going to make a course, and part of what we're going to do with making that course was, I mean, it was just beginning to end, create the course, find people to be in the course. This was going to lead to further lead generation, right? So we had this whole thing looked out. And so had the plan of what we're going to do. It started off great. There was a lot of interest, and it completely fizzled. I mean, like the interest level was, we just got like a few people that were interested. We needed it to be more like a dozen to be able to do the course. So we didn't even get the course off the ground, and it was out publicly. We had promoted this, right? Sent that out to the entire network, and it didn't work, right? It's like, and I can tell you, it's like demoralizing when you think you got this plan on what in the world you're going to do, and it completely just flops on you. And so, negative, the other way to get out of it was, instead of just looking at the tail end of saying, okay, these were the ends that I was looking for. I'm like, I want a course that has this many people and it's going to lead to all this. Is really going back, I'm like, what did I think was going to happen, right? And as I start new projects, trying to make sure we say that, I'm like, look, these are all tests. We have no idea. Like, we are going out, we are marketing things. We do not know what people are going to be looking for. And so we got to put down on paper and have a discussion. Like, hey, I think this is what's going to happen. And if it starts to happen, it could be a great success. And goes, do we expect it to be a success? To actually talk through, what did we learn from this? Because if you don't learn from it, it's going to be anything. So the only thing that can get me out of the hole is like, okay, what did I learn from this? And the more times up front, it's like, write it down, set it aside, work hard for the project, and go, did that do what I thought it was going to do? Did I get lucky in spots? Did there some pivots that I made that were great? And the more time we can do that, the better off we can be. So that's the only thing that gets me through. And the other thing too, that kind of add in here, it's slightly different, but these things is, we make these projects that are so long, right? I mean, there's so many moving pieces that the motivation to start, you get a bad week in there, right? Like, no phone calls come through, no progress is made, something completely falls apart, and go like, is this project done? And really, it's just like, you just had a bad week, right? You had a bad step in this. So being able to break it down and actually say that these milestones that you can meet has made a huge difference, right? I always think back when I was in the Navy, it was like getting my qual card done. It's like, oh, I got to get 300 signatures. I'm like, no, you just need to do like 2 a day. If you do 2 a day, you're rocking, right? You've got this down. And so the more you focus on, like, look, if I just get these 2 a day and I set these steps up for myself, then yeah, I can have a bad day and have 0. But it just means I know we're going to catch up, and I'm not just saying like, this is all or nothing on that end project. It's all the steps along the way. And then it makes it fun. That's the other part too, is if you don't make the process and the journey of getting there fun, then your chances of success are going to be so tiny.
Yeah, great insight. And the perspective you talk about there of, am I looking at the end goal and worrying about the end goal, or am I just biting off what I can chew on today? And if it's a setback, okay, but it's only a partial setback. Rather than going like, oh my God, the sky's fallen. We didn't made our end goal because you weren't checking it along the way, or you weren't, just appreciating the achievement you had made. So, if you were saying that call card, like 300 things, right? So if you have got 50 of them done, well, great, you got 50. Holy cow. That's pretty awesome. So
Yeah.
It's that, but the other perspective, right, is that, well, I don't have 300 yet. Yeah. Okay. What are you going to look at? That you don't have 300? Or are you going to look that you do have 50 and you have a nice plan in place? So that's a great insight.
The flip side to it too, though, is, at least when I did the card, I knew there were 300. I'm like, we're doing these things. We have no idea how many, what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
And so you break it into steps too. It also lets you pivot. I mean, we're in the middle of it now. You look and you start and like, okay, this is the metric we've been tracking for the last 6 months. Things aren't going right. I'm like, is this the right thing to track? Because it's also defining what activities we're doing. And so how else do you pivot, right? And when you're starting out and it's small, the only way we make these pivots is to actually break it up into smaller pieces. And then you see something, you learn something new. Like, this is really working. Then you can actually move, right? So you can have that down day. It goes, okay, what can I learn from this? Where can we go? And maybe you change up your entire plan and end up in a completely different place, in a better place than you ever thought you would be before you started.
Yeah, great point. At SAB, like we talk about how small business typically doesn't have access to capital. Now I know you guys are helping with that, but they don't have that access to capital to make those major changes. They have to do what we call micro pivots. And
Right.
so if you have that assessment process in place a little bit along the way, you can go, oh, well, this part's not working right now. Maybe we need to pivot. And I think that's a huge lesson for small business, because that is the challenge. Is like, how do you evaluate your progress? How do you assess along the way so that you don't get to the end and are totally set back? Good. Well, Jake, you've shared some stories personally as in your work in this line of work right now, but I'm curious, on the military side, do you have any stories that would be valuable? Because we always like a good sea story.
Oh, you gotta have a good story. Yeah. So I said with submarines, right? And I had the privilege of working on a couple of really good captains. So they went off on to become admirals. And um, there's probably go when you're the officer of the deck. So I got trained under the first one, and they relieved in the middle to go through. So trained on the first one. And the way it works as officer of the deck when you're running a submarine, of course, is the captain is in charge. And their evolutions, they're so important that the captain has to give the call to do it. So think like diving the ship, surfacing the ship, going to periscope depth, transmitting a radio message, starting the reactor, of course, launching weapons. But I'm talking just the basic evolutions that put the ship at risk. So the way that you do that as the officer of deck is you call the captain comes in the control room, you go through a litany of all the things that he needs to know, and then you say, request permission to dive the ship, right? So that is the normal way. He goes, you have permission to dive the ship, right? You request permission to go. So the second captain arrives. I'm trained as officer of deck, and he says, hey, the next time you do this, I don't want you all to do that anymore as junior officers. I want you to tell me all the things, just think out loud, all the things that are going through your mind that you think you would want to know to do that next evolution. And then you tell me what you're going to do. And if I don't like it, I'll tell you no. Otherwise, it's your ship. Right? I'm like, okay, but let me tell you, okay, you're in the control room. All the crew, all the watch standards are there. You start going through the litany of all the things that you're thinking through in the mind. The captain's just there and he's listening. And it gets to that key moment, and you say, I am diving the ship, right? So no longer ask permission. He says, very well. And he just walks out, right? It was like, that's good. I was like that feeling as, early 20s to go through, and you've got 24 missiles, you've got a nuclear reactor, about 200 crew on this multi-billion-dollar submarine. I'm like, oh goodness, I just did this. Now, is it drastically different? No, but it's that idea, that mindset. It's like, this is not me asking permission from a person. It's like, I'm doing it and he's advising. And it's a lot like work. I mean, we don't have to ask permission to go do things. We're out there, it's like, we just need to go do it. People are there to advise you, but that ownership structure, it was an amazing feeling then, and it still is now. I'm like, we all need to go and do that. You don't ask permission. You find out all the information you can, you talk with advisors about it, and you go. And I love that perspective that he gave, that little tweak of things, like that complete ownership on there was just it was an amazing feeling. It still sticks out. That was 20 plus years ago that we did that, but that was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, I bet that was an amazing feeling. Very empowering, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's completely empowering. And so I know every time you can get that opportunity of people to empower them, it goes, no, this is yours, right? So if you got somebody you hired them, like, that's what you hired them to do. Like, let them go and give them that empowerment, and try to back out and give them permission to go and do that. And I think a lot of times you'll be surprised, right? In a good way, good surprise. Usually it is a good surprise.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure you've seen it as well. Typically, a business owner, if they started out themselves, then they own the company. They feel that responsibility. And so when they start hiring people, there's that tendency to be like the first captain you talked about, where it's very command and control and hang on, and you can't do anything until I approve that you can do anything. And so that's the tendency a business owner will have if they've owned that baby, right? And they don't want to give up. But when they learn that, yeah, if you can trust your people and empower them, then if you play a mentor role rather than a command and control kind of role, then now you're building some autonomy in your company, freeing up your time as a CEO or business owner, so you can do the strategic stuff you need to do. And I think that's a very valuable lesson, even though it's military. I think it's super valuable for anybody who's in the business space and has created their own business and wants to know how to lead a little bit better. So thanks for bringing that topic up. That's really
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. Well, Jake, I'd like to know a little bit more about you beyond how you've, helped, beyond how you've done ups and downs in your business. So tell me a little bit about, if you could meet anybody, deceased or living, who would that be and why would you meet with them?
So I thought about this and I was going to link the public figure, right? I was like, if I go through and like, you know what, actually the person I'd really like to meet is actually someone in my family from back in the mid 1850s. And I think about this at the mid 1800s. So, a lot of people say want to go back to a family member, but there's this one lady, she was in Germany and she got pregnant out of wedlock and something made her leave, right? And I don't know quite what it was, but if you think about that, you're in the place that you grew up. It's the mid 1800s, so it's probably the only place she's ever been. Wasn't a war going on to go through. I don't think it was like you need to leave. Something triggered in her mind, says, my opportunities are elsewhere. So I'm going to get on a boat, went to the United States, and somehow she got from, most likely, I don't know where exactly she landed, but somewhere in New York, and somehow got to the middle of Missouri. And probably all she had was someone like, hey, I know some people who went, and I assume when I get there, things will be okay. Or a few people, like that little letter that says like, hey, they know my family, so I'm sure I can make ends meet. But she had no idea and somehow got herself there to go through. And that idea that she left and did that, right? And that son of hers that she had ended up in the community where I grew up, in the late 1900s to go through, right? He started a brick foundry. There was a flour mill that the family had. All of a sudden, like the church that I was baptized in had bricks that family had made. I'm like, this is amazing. So I would love to go back and talk to her. It's like that idea that someone throwing everything out, all the social norms that they knew, all of the way life works, all went out the window. I was like, I'm going to just figure this out. That is amazing bravery that I can't even contemplate that type of bravery that it takes to be able to do that. And there's a ton of people, I guess almost all of us who are here in the US that happened, right? Someone said, I need to change up what I do, right? I would love to go back and talk to those people. And of course, there's new people coming in every day that have that, but those are the amazing people, because it's a hard time for me to contemplate what that truly feels like to start over fresh. And part of me wants to just go back and tell her, I'm like, hey, we all did okay. Right? As a family, I would be love to show you like, oh, I'm glad I did that, right? So I'd love to go back and just hear that story, and then just to say thumbs up. All right, thanks for doing that, because we're all probably in a better place than we would have been if you had stayed.
Yeah. Oh, that is a really interesting perspective and story, Jake. I'm glad you shared that, because I'm hearing like pioneer, like the true sense of that pioneering spirit, launching out into the unknown, and to be able to go back and go, hey, you did good.
It is. And I talked, and I talked to Liz, it's the interesting perspective, because part of you feels like when you're in a place, right, whatever that happens to be, of the area where you grew up. So for me, it's like the family was there and the people are all buried there, right? So that history, or it could be that even as simple as you've been with the company for a long time, or with an organization, and it's like, I don't know if I want to leave. But that feeling, as I said, I felt bad about that. Like, is it right for me to leave? I should stay for this. But it's actually that feeling too of, a lady told me once, she had come from Mexico and goes, hey, that's what they had to do. But don't forget the lady who left. Don't forget the family member who goes. And so maybe that's you, that you need to leave the organization where you're from, and you need to be that pioneer. And that's okay too, because those pioneers, that person you're looking up to, like, they made a choice to leave. They didn't stay. And so sometimes that's what your life calls you to do, is you need to switch up what you're doing and be different, right? And so, yeah, that's that energy. You got to dig down deep to figure out, okay, I can do this and I can start fresh. And honestly, human beings, we can, right? We have way more resilience than we give ourselves credit for.
Oh man, what some great life lessons you just shared there, Jake. That's wonderful. And there are a lot of people I come across at my own work where they're considering a career change, or they feel stuck, and so they do have to, in a sense, be brave and jump out into the unknown and be that pioneer that leads, or just starts afresh in something new that really is something important to them, and whatever it is that motivates them. So finding that is a great challenge, but once you find it, man, you can go and be that pioneer on anything.
That's right.
Yeah, cool. Well, Jake, if people want to get a hold of you, of LocalVest, how can they do so?
So we have, our website is localvest.com, and you can write me and you can send me an email. It's jake@localvest.com. But you can find us there online.
All right. Awesome. Well, Jake, thanks for being on the show today. Really enjoyed having you on here. And final point, go Navy.
That's right. Go Navy.
Thanks for listening to Energy of Business Moments with your host, Michael Sipe. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.